July 4th, 1776. At those words, every American heart should swell with pride. 1776 represented the culmination of thousands of years of Western civilization. And yet, there is a growing danger that threatens every blessing our ancestors fought so hard for. Our nation is witnessing a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, erase our values, and indoctrinate our children. Angry mobs are trying to tear down statues of our founders, deface our most sacred memorials, and unleash a wave of violent crime in our cities. Many of these people have no idea why they're doing this, but some know exactly what they're doing. They think the American people are weak, soft, and submissive, but no. The American people are strong and proud, and they will not allow our country and all of its values, history, and culture to be taken away from them. We will expose this dangerous movement, protect our nation's children from this radical assault, and preserve our beloved American way of life. There is a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. It's not going to happen to us. It can't happen to us. It can't happen here, right? I mean, come on, fascism? What? Well, every word I just espoused was condensed from President Trump's 4th of July speech this past summer at Mount Rushmore. Clearly, this rise in fascism is a huge concern for the president. So, to all of the radical alt-left folk out there, I guess you and Trump actually do have something in common. So this speech received a great reception from its live audience. You know, the crowd was cheering, applauding for the president. But here's my hot take. This speech perfectly encapsulates the fervor of fascism. Now, if you're a lefty like myself, this take wasn't too hot, tepid at best. But for the untrained ear, this rhetoric can just be so easily overlooked. Notice how vague the president was actually being. Apparently, our very way of life is at stake here. But, at whose hands? How exactly is it at stake? Who exactly is tearing down these statues and perpetuating this violent crime across our cities? What are these angry mobs so angry about? That's the thing. He doesn't give a direct answer, and he never will. He can't. Because to go into detail, to just simply acknowledge that these people are protesting in the name of racial justice to combat the systemic targeting of black people in our criminal justice system, that would humanize them. That would give them a face to the public. And although these are American citizens he's talking about, who are, just exercising their First Amendment rights, notice how he makes a distinction between them and the American people. You see, the fascist needs to differentiate his opposition from the rest of the country by framing these protesters as this violent, faceless threat. It makes his words easier to resonate. So instead, he just says that these people, they just hate our country, they think we're weak, they're taking advantage of you, tapping into society's masculine insecurities, which is another trait of fascism in and of its own. Now, alright, listen, okay? Me and my fucking radical, postmodernist, neo-Marxist type pals, we could shoot the shit all day about this stuff, this rise in American fascism amidst this fucking tsunami wave of global right-wing populism. Easy stuff. But when I discuss this with people outside of my political circle, I find myself in a state of dejection. They just don't see it. I wish they did. Even the fucking liberals, with their Hillary bumper stickers, still intact on their car, and their Orange Man Bad Facebook memes just running rampant on my Facebook wall, who hate Trump just as much as I do, they still don't acknowledge just how close to fascism we really are as a country, despite all of the evidence. I've heard arguments along the lines of, okay, sure, there is a fervor of division throughout the country. We are absolutely living in tumultuous times, but it's not like we're on the brink of a dictatorship or anything. Our government has too many checks and balances for something like that to happen. Sure, there are literal children being separated from their parents, and, migrants are being placed into concentration camps along the southern border, but we're a long way from being like the Nazis. I mean, it's not like we're killing them or anything. Jesus. Yeah, I'll give it to you. Some of the things the president has said, or equally some of the things that he's avoided saying, are pretty questionable. I'll give you that. His refusal to denounce the white nationals, him hinting at running for a third term. It's sketchy. It's not presidential. But hey, that's just Trump being Trump. It's all entertainment. It's theater. No sense in getting worked up about it. The issue I see here is that the Nazis just really set a high bar for fascist regimes. You know what, with their extensive use of gas chambers, plans for global domination, and what have you, the bar is so high that anytime somebody invokes the word fascism, people automatically associate it with genocide and world domination. But that's not entirely the case. You see, something important to understand about fascism is that, much like, the video catalog of PragerU, for example, it exists on a spectrum. Okay, there are different degrees of fascism. You need to look at it with nuance. America has always had some fascistic elements to it. I mean, hell, the Nazi lawyers who wrote the Nuremberg laws modeled those laws after American segregation and misogyny laws. In fact, they thought that the Americans were a little too extreme and that the Nazis actually had to temper back some of their ideas. But regardless, bringing things back to modern times, when looking at all of the rhetoric and all of the actions coming from the White House, it's been a little extra, no? The ethos of a fascist regime is palpable with this administration. Rampant traditionalism, MAGA, the blatant denouncement of intellectuals, cronyism, hostility towards immigrants, intertwining religion with the state, obsession with crime and punishment. All of the signs are there. And yet, it can't happen here. Now, the argument that fascism can't happen here, in my purview, is something uniquely American, because in America, freedom, or more specifically, the ideal of freedom, the concept of freedom, it's a key part of our national identity. That's not to say that freedom itself is uniquely American. It's not. There are plenty of other countries that have freedom. Canada, France, Germany, Australia, you name it, the whole lot. Which, quick aside, there's actually a plethora of factors and evidence that indicate the contrary, that America is actually on the lower tier of free places to live when compared to our contemporaries. I know this next stat is going to be a bit on the nose, but when looking at the Human Freedom Index, the US is only ranked 15th. But aside from that one, there are plenty of other metrics you can look at, social mobility, which is essentially what the American dream is. We're only ranked 27th. Number of incarcerated citizens, well, we're number 1 in that regard. There's also education, economic opportunity, a whole bunch of things which I implore you to research on your own to paint a better picture for yourself. But for right now, for the sake of getting to my point, forget the numbers. It's not about the numbers. It's about the idea. The idea that fascism can't happen here because America is the world's grand bastion of freedom and prosperity. That's what we're about. American exceptionalism. That's our shit. The notion that America is a special place. Now, all of us, we all know the America-lovin' good old boy. The type that's huffing down glizzies on the 4th, popping off fireworks, Coors Light, obnoxiously revving their truck engines as a means of demonstrating how big their cocks are, just choking us with their exhaust fumes. But it's not just them. Regardless of what side of the political spectrum you fall on, this mindset has permeated throughout our society. The mindset that America is the best country in the world, that our forefathers, they trekked from Europe to this new land seeking freedom of thought and expression, only to later revolt and found a new country upon these principles: liberty, justice, equality, reason. Sure, there were hiccups along the way, like slavery. But surely we've evolved since then. We're a lot better, more civilized than we were back then. America always has been a democracy, still is, We went on to later promote and protect other democracies across the world, winning 2 world wars, 2 brutal world wars, I should emphasize, in the very name of democracy, in order to defeat fascism. Not to mention the scientific achievements our country has made, and the great thinkers and artists that our country has birthed. We are different than the rest of the world. Our rich history, our culture, our people are exceptional. We're the best country in the world. America is superior. Surely, we're incapable of falling into the rabbit hole of fascism, right? Now, we're going to backtrack a little bit. I was born in 1998. I'm a Zoomer. I'm Gen Z. There are a bunch of people my age that will falsely claim that they're millennials for clout, but they're wrong. We're Gen Z. We came of age during the Obama presidency. Now, during these early pubescent years, I was a big gamer boy. I would spend hours with my friends after school, just thriving within the caffeinated fever dream of toxic game chat, romanticized warfare, and American exceptionalism that was and still is Call of Duty, just blissfully ignorant of what was happening beneath the surface of our society. But as I got older and started to approach voting age, I started to pick up on some of these issues that were happening, and I started to ask myself some questions. Why is it that these seemingly innocent black people just keep getting shot and choked and murdered by the police? Why is it that I'm soon going to have to plunge myself into student debt, but there are other countries where their colleges are virtually free? How is it that ISIS managed to grow and spread so quickly? Did the Zodiac Killer always intend on making a run for president? And by the time the 2016 election was in full swing, I'd realized a few things. 1. Being a libertarian is a fucking baseless nonsense ideology, and I should stop doing that now. And 2, my God, is America broken? I mean, it's broken. A lot more broken than me or probably anyone around me had even realized. The 2016 election has since come and gone, and boy, have things really popped the fuck off since then, especially if you're a leftist like myself. But since becoming more politically activated, learning about these issues more in detail, learning the broader things too, what is socialism, neoliberalism, what is fascism, me along with my other comrades can safely assert that the country is on the precipice of fascism. But why us? Was this always meant to happen to us? Well, no, the circumstances needed to be just right, and they were. The Obama presidency was a huge letdown for the country. I mean, I'm not going to deny that he achieved remarkable things, don't get me wrong, but to many, he fell very short of what was expected of him. Wages remained stagnant. The wealth gap between the wealthy and the poor increased. People are still dying because healthcare is still too expensive. Student loan debt has increased by 86% under his administration. His whole campaign was based on hope and change. And yet economically, things didn't really change all that much for the average person. Economic anxiety still looms over a majority of the American people. And this is something that the fascist knows how to tap into. They're skilled at this, speaking to the frustrations of a shrinking and struggling middle class. This is something that historians will often point to when answering the question of how did the Nazis come to power in Germany. There was a lot of economic anxiety post-World War I. However, that's not the only thing. In fact, there's a much bigger factor at play, something that the Nazis, the Italians, the Spanish, all of them did not have, something they couldn't even fathom coming into existence, a tool that has quickly become the most powerful tool for shaping public opinion, the fucking internet. Now, I don't want to bash the internet. I mean, I fucking love the internet. I mean, despite all of the chaos going on in society, there is nothing like an old Vine compilation to bring me solace and to distract me from the existential dread that our generation is steeped in. And yet, I feel comfortable saying that the internet is ultimately one of the biggest things responsible for eroding our democracy. One of the pillars of fascism, as described by philosopher Jason Stanley, is a term he coined, unreality. Essentially, what this means is that the fascists will use the media as a means of disillusioning the public to gain legitimacy. Now, there's a two-pronged approach to this. First is to delegitimize the established media outlets. You criticize them consistently. You claim that all of their reporting is fake. You claim that they are corrupt. Perhaps they were co-opted by your adversaries, like the quote-unquote radical left, or maybe the Jews, for example. You need to cement the idea that the media is a dishonest institution, that they have their own ulterior motives and are an enemy of the people. The second prong is to put all information, no matter how fringe or unreliable it may be, on an equal platform with all other media. They do this with the guise of open discourse. We just want to have open debate with these ideas. But in reality, what they're doing is lending credibility to misinformation. And by allowing everything, all news, all articles, all conspiracy theories, everything, all information, on an equal platform, people lose the sense of truth and reality. And that's a good thing for the fascists, because if there's no truth, if everyone is lying, if it really is us versus them, it's a lot easier for their propaganda to resonate. And now that we have the internet, all of this bullshit, anything on your Twitter feeds, subreddits, Tinder bios, whatever, etc. All of it is literally on the same platform. It can be sent out to thousands with no verification required. Just look at how toxic the Facebook wall has become. With all these biases, omissions, in many cases just flat out lies being so easily spread and accessed, for the average person, it's overwhelming and there's no real way to control it. Back in high school, whether or not it was your history class, government class, social studies, whatever, people were often taught about the 4 estates of government. There was the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And then the 4th one was not actually a part of the government like the latter 3. The 4th one was the media, an ethical means of keeping the public informed in order to have an effective democracy. We no longer have an ethical means of keeping the public informed. All of these websites and companies, when they put out this information, it's the biggest, most dramatic headlines that gain the most attention and thus get the most clicks and views. It's all about profit. There's no ethics behind it. And because of this, many more people will absorb and believe things that appeal to their emotions and their opinions. Because now that they have all this information that appears credible, I mean, hey, like I just found an article online, this seems legit. They can back their claims up with this. They have confirmation bias. And this is not going to go away. This is always going to be an issue from here on out. Now, I've hooted and hollered about this for a while with this video, so what do we do about it? To be honest with you, I don't have a solid answer. I don't have an idea for some systemic way to fix this problem. You know, the internet is so big, right? So to establish a body, some external body that dictates what's credible and what isn't, that could potentially set a pretty bad precedent. It could infringe on our rights to free speech. And that question taps into the paradox of democracy. Because in order to have an effective democracy, a successful democracy, free speech is essential. We need that. And yet, it is free speech which enables demagogues and fascists to spread their influence and to gain power, at which point they can terminate that democracy. Perhaps I think it was the infamous Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels that put it best when he said, "This will always remain one of the best jokes of democracy, that it gave its deadly enemies the means by which it was destroyed." Now, like I said before, I don't have a solid answer. There is no answer. This is the paradox. This is the ultimate contradiction of democratic philosophy. Sleepy Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. And Joe Biden doesn't like the left. He has very adamantly separated himself from us and does not advocate for the things we do. We are not simpatico, as he likes to put it. But despite these disagreements, despite these different approaches that we have, despite how sleepy he may be, he's entirely right when he says that we are fighting for the soul of this nation. This upcoming election will determine who we are as a country, who we are as Americans. Because it's not too late. We can come back from this. We can step away from the precipice. Or we can cement our trajectory towards fascism. And it's not just us going down this path. It's happening all over the world. Brazil, Turkey, India. Fascism is rising on the global stage. Fascism can happen here. Fascism can happen anywhere now. It doesn't matter whether or not Trump is in office. This is something we're always going to be prone to, and we need to recognize that. And until an ethical solution is developed, if it ever happens, it's up to us as individuals to keep ourselves and those around us informed, and to prevent us from falling into the rabbit hole.